with the overcoming of bourgeois society, the individual will be freed of the kind of limitations imposed upon the individual through the division of labor. And that, in a sense, the individual is free to engage in an unrestricted array of activities. And each of those activities, interestingly enough, is presented as an activity that can be performed without interacting with anyone else. Fishing in the morning, hunting in the afternoon, writing critique in the evening. Right? It's just an exercise of a personal choice that would in no way be restrained, it would seem, by anyone else's, or at least the conditions would be such that you could do whatever you please. And that seems to be presented as if it were what emancipation involves. An emancipation from a division of labor where the kind of restraints imposed upon one by having to perform a single type of activity involves a restriction upon one's freedom. Now, such restrictions operated in the natural division of labor to be found in what could be considered pre-modern, pre-bourgeois societies where tradition imposes by birthright and other naturally conditioned factors roles that one is expected to perform, independently of any choice on one's part. In civil society, in bourgeois society, where one's livelihood is dependent upon entering into market relationships, here there's an element of contingency because what one is to do is not dictated by birth. It's up in the air what one is to do. What one is to do is dependent upon what one can find a viable livelihood, a viable form of earning in the marketplace. Now, in a certain sense, that's mediated by two types of contingencies. One is what you choose to do, or what you choose to attempt to do. What you're going to choose as your livelihood, right? A question that all of you, in some respect, are either facing now or are going to be facing. On the other hand, not only is what you do in some respect dependent on your own arbitrary will, on the other hand, it faces the constraints of finding a form of livelihood that is viable, that is marketable, that will find demand in the marketplace for what you are seeking to do. And that, in a sense, makes one's livelihood contingent on the choices of others, which themselves are equally dependent. But the key element is that there's this external contingency afflicting what one does, conditioning what one does, even though there is an element of choice. But then there's also the question of being restricted to a single type of activity. And throughout when Marx speaks about the division of labor, the implication is that we're restricted to a certain kind of activity, which absorbs all of our activity. And the notion is that this is antithetical to freedom. Well, note that freedom here is being thought of, in one respect, in a very negative fashion. Freedom from limitation. So after all, when you make a decision, you opt for some determinate course of action. In doing so, you rule out other possibilities. Life might appear to have all sorts of other possibilities before you commit to a career. The possibilities of life partners might appear to be full of all sorts of possibilities until you commit to a particular individual or a plurality of individuals in succession or whatever it might be. In each case, in doing anything, you have to determine yourself, which is to say exclude other options. Right? If you hold yourself back from all determinacy, you don't do anything. But on the other hand, one could say that if you act freely, what you choose is not externally dictated. It's mediated by your choice. You're not compelled to do this as opposed to other things. But to act, you have to do something to the exclusion of something else. Now, Marx seems in this notion of emancipation understood as just this exercise of free choice without external restraints. A choice that operates in terms of activities that simply involve you and are not contingent upon the will of others, which is why they are presented as a hobby existence of private activities. Seems to have this notion of freedom that almost reduces to unrestrained personal freedom, unrestrained exercise of the choosing will. It's not a freedom or an exercise of will that in any way is connected to the willing of others. If it is, it's only in the sense that somehow or other, the abolition of division of labor, both in any natural sense and in the conventional sense of the externalities and interdependencies of the market, is something that has to be accomplished. Well, that involves something having been done. What it is left to some degree indeterminate. And then one is in a situation where one now can exercise an unrestrained personal license that has no necessary connection to relating to others.